Hi everyone, it's Allison in my violin studio, and this is part 2 of my preliminary vibrato video clip. Okay, so on the first one I talked about tension and finger action a little bit and how that may be an issue. In this one I just want to talk through, you see I don't have a violin in my hands. I want to try to clarify for you the kind of physical principle involved in the main types of vibrato. I think sometimes you might be trying to do something and you get so much detail into your mind that you get lost and you don't know what to focus on while you're doing it and the thing falls apart. So I'm hopeful that maybe a little information of the right sort sometimes just lets you cut through all the noise in your head. So you all know there are two main types of vibrato. There's the hand vibrato and the arm vibrato. Everybody knows that. I hear people talk about finger vibrato. Galamian talks about it. I have to admit I don't quite understand the concept because it makes sense to talk about a finger vibrato, but where I get lost is I don't understand what muscle is making it happen. So I share everyone else's confusion on that subject. But let's talk about hand vibrato first. In the debate about which one you should do first, I don't know. I'm not sure it matters. They're both good tools. If you may have some lingering issues of tension, hopefully not much, but if there's a little bit, my suspicion is you may have more success with a hand vibrato. Arm vibrato really requires a lot of relaxation in your hand and arm, the whole system. Okay, so conceptually, hand vibrato is, let's be clear, vibrato is an oscillation. It's a variation in the sound. It starts from your pitch, it goes below, and it comes back to your pitch. Never go above your pitch, because the people listening, their ears will read that as out of tune, sharp. This person doesn't know what they're doing. It really sounds awful. I've heard people do it. It really sounds awful. And while I'm saying that, I want to put out a caveat. I have seen people talk about thinking of the vibrato motion as being up and back, up and back. I have to admit, I find that sometimes when my hand is at certain angles, I am conscious that I'm going up and back. But the important distinction to make is my up is actually the pitch and the back is below pitch. Okay, so whether you're thinking conceptually about coming up and back or whether you're thinking backwards and then relax, whichever way you're thinking, it's pitch below pitch. Okay, so all right, so the oscillation we got to make by some part of you has got to move and the other end of that extremity is attached to something and it will create a pendulum movement. And I can never remember in English the word, anyway, as an arch type shape somewhere. So there's hand vibrato. It's moving at the wrist joint. The mechanism, the muscle, which is the impetus, which is causing the motion, is in the hand. Okay. For myself, I find it depends on, the position, because depending where you are on the instrument, if you're doing this to get a note, your options for vibrato are going to be very different than if you're doing this. So, I find that there's something that I call, in my mind, a knocking back. My basic notion to create the movement is I'm knocking my hand back. Of course, it looks different when you're actually playing a note on an instrument because your fingers are still attached. But, and I haven't got a violin, so you can't really see that oscillation. But anyway, that's the basic concept. So you can think of that, knocking back. I also find, perhaps particularly because I have a smaller hand, if you have a big hand, you can keep a lot of your hand underneath the violin and you still have fingers to come over the top. Okay, I'm trying to check and make sure I'm still in feel. So when you have a smaller hand, you can't afford to waste the length underneath. You need to get your hand much higher. So you tend to have a higher position. And sometimes you're kind of already at the maximum of your extension. It's hard to vibrate. It's like, if you've ever worn a watch strap, a metal watch strap, you know, and they have those little links. And if your watch strap is loose, you can kind of, you know, make ripples in the links. And I often think of vibrato as kind of like that. It's like you have a loose link somewhere, and you just kind of, I don't know, play with it, you know, and let it rattle around in there. If you have a smaller hand, you probably don't have any loose links, and your hand may be at its kind of maximum, just putting your notes down. So, in which case, yeah, there's a challenge there. Anyway, to get back to my vibrato, I find that sometimes it feels to me, I'm not saying it actually is, but it feels sometimes that it's more of a sideways rocking than it is a backwards knocking. So these are just, I mean, these are little mind games that we play, right? Because we're not looking while we play. So what does it feel like? Those are things you can try. One may make sense to you more so than another. The hand position that you have is quite important too. Some people will be supporting their violin like this. Those people may be prone to losing contact here, which is really dangerous. It's very difficult to play in tune if your hand doesn't know where it is. So even if you have that kind of thumb support, try to make sure that the side of your finger at least is brushing the edge of the fingerboard so you know where you are. Okay. But anyway, if you see what I mean, the kind of the point from which the oscillation is happening is different with that than if you have a thumb that's up, because now it's almost more of a sideways under thing as opposed to a. So you see how the shape where your thumb is and whether it's rounded or a little bit tense. Those will just vary the kind of the shape of your vibrato. So things to just experiment with. Each person, depending on the shape of your hand, your instrument, the way you play, you'll need to make little micro adjustments to any exercise or any authority on exactly how you should be playing this. So that's hand vibrato. There's also apparently something called finger vibrato, and Galamian talks about it, and if he talks about it, I'm sure that there are people out there who have mastered it. And actually, I kind of wondered if that's what Gil Shaham is doing in some video clips I've seen, where his fingers move in the most extraordinary way in his vibrato. You can bet I'm going to be playing games with this in the next couple of months. But in the meantime, I don't know anything about finger vibrato, so I'm not going to talk about it. Arm vibrato, however, the concept of arm vibrato is, okay, what joint is it moving from, and what muscle is the impetus, right? Those are the questions you ask. Well, kind of the main joint that's moving is the elbow, but I have an engineer for a father, and if it was only your elbow moving, your violin would be jumping up and down. So in actual fact, it's coming from your shoulder. Okay, the impetus. Imagine I have no hand. The top of your forearm goes out, relax, goes out, relax, goes out. So that's this kind of, it's like a steam engine, piston pumping away. It's a bigger movement. Well, it can be a bigger movement. It can also be very small and discreet, depends how you're doing it. But it certainly involves more of you. I think for shorter-handed people, it offers some good possibilities for, when your hand is all stretched out in some passages. Of course, again, it looks a little bit different once you get the finger. Anyway, I can't do that. I need a violin. So the backwards knocking, it also depends what position you're in, right? Because nothing's ever simple here. I'm going to move this a little bit. Personally, when I'm doing that, I like to do that when I'm on a third or a fourth finger, maybe a second finger. Not so much first finger, because I like to use my first finger to kind of knock backwards. But, you experiment. And I'm avoiding my second finger because, I managed to bang it up today. now I've changed the point of the fulcrum completely because I'm leaning against the side of the instrument, right? So that's a different... If I was to come out and do an arm vibrato there, it is possible to do an arm vibrato with a hand vibrato on top of it, but you kind of have to line up the oscillations a little bit. It gives you a little bit wider. If you're playing a really big, lush, romantic piece, that might be good to do. So, yeah, there's the knocking back in first position. Okay, now let's go this way. If the thumb is under here, it gives you a nice vibrato. The danger here is I keep hitting my lamp. If this index finger is not touching the side of the violin, you don't really know what position you're in or where your hand is. You have no frame of reference. So when you do this kind of vibrato, if you do it, bring your finger back and at least kind of brush the side. You may not want to have much contact, but at least, you know, when your hand is rocking, at least at some point in the rocking cycle, you need to be brushing against the side of the instrument so you know where you are. You can feel if the nut is there. Okay, if your thumb is higher up, with the thumb higher up, I'd be more inclined to go towards an arm vibrato. But you have to experiment and figure out what works. Which one? Now that feels like a side rocking vibrato to me. It probably looks exactly the same as the knocking back. So that, anyway, I hope that I was able to make clear to you when you're doing your vibrato, be clear what joint is the movement coming from and what muscle is the impetus that's causing the action. And then you want to think about where's your fulcrum? What is the actual angle or the trajectory, if you will, of your oscillation? Because your difficulties may be in there. And so if I'm just, reviewing in my mind. So go through hand tension, go through finger action. Try to clarify in your own mind exactly what kind of a vibrato shape you're attempting to do for any particular exercise. And if you're doing an exercise and it's not working, sort out what shape are you trying in your mind to do, and then try a different one. Try some small variation, maybe an adjustment of thumb or just a change in the way you're perceiving the movement. Okay, so those are some of the elements to play with, and I may or may not, depending on time and opportunity, get any other videos up on actual vibrato exercises in the next week or two. We'll just see how it goes, okay? So good luck, and I hope you have fun with that.